Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar fan commentary track video. This one is going to be for Book 3, Fire, Episode 7, The Runaway. So again, continue to send in your suggestions for what episodes you want me to do for Avatar and Korra in future commentary track videos. But to set up your copy of the episode to be in sync with this commentary, what you need to do is obviously have your DVD, Blu-ray, or wherever you have the episode, a streaming service or whatever, ready to go at the start of this episode, including the intro. When I finish up this introduction to the video, there'll be about a 10-second pause with no audio, and then when I come back to speak after that pause, that's when I'm going to hit play and start the commentary, and that's when you should hit play as well, and we should be synced up. So, bringing the introduction of the video to a close, again, after the 10-second pause, hit play when I start speaking, and we should be synced up. Okay, so here we are with 307, The Runaway. This is an episode that I rate like too highly. I think I have it in around 40 on my list. So it's sort of middle of the road. I think it's towards the top of the C rank episodes in that like it's still very, very enjoyable, but it's not one of the top tier episodes. I think there's a few little things with this episode that keep it from being one of the more highly rated episodes. I suppose the main thing would probably just be that if there's any like major, I suppose, complaint you could have against the series, it would be that like, you know, Toph's main character arc doesn't really get resolved. There's the Blind Bandit, there's pretty much this episode, and that's it. And we have to wait until the comics actually get any sort of resolution to Toph and her parents. The other thing would be that it brings back this thing here, the recap, as you can see from the chase, I believe that is. It's a very drama-y dynamic here, this Katara-Toph issue that's presented at that point relatively early into Toph's run with the team, and then they come back to it here. It's one of the less interesting, I think, dynamics between the main cast. I'd prefer with Katara and Toph they delve more into stuff that was like in, say, like the tale of Toph and Katara, and ultimately I think we can get it like that. They bring a little bit of that into this towards the end, and it's a very strong moment once we get there. I think there just could have been a little bit more done. But we do start kind of, I suppose, in media res, which is interesting for Avatar. How did we get into this situation? Has Katara actually betrayed Toph? What's going on here? This is pretty crazy. But here we go. 3 days earlier, we see that it's going to be an episode about performing scams, and that ended up being actually Katara getting involved in the scams. But yeah, this is a nice one. Yeah, we open up with some training, which is quite good. It looks like, 3 days later, Toph and Katara are arguing again, but not quite yet. They're actually just training Aang 2-on-1. Here we see the seismic sense to set up that he knows it, of course, ahead of the finale where he uses it very effectively against Ozai, but just showing the skill level that Aang has, getting skills from like everyone basically. And yeah, that starts the issue. Toph being a little not quite as fully aware of the surroundings as maybe she should be, but yeah, you see the way that they're so easily, both of them, able to annoy each other, and this is kind of part of their dynamic. Two of the two members of the group kind of most prone to sort of going into sort of arguments with each other. And that's what we get here. And that's what this whole episode is about. Sneak attack Sokka. Not very sneaky. But yeah, it's a nice dynamic here of just going from them training Aang very effectively to just this pretty childish fighting that they have. But this is where you have to almost like remind yourself, yes, they are kids, they are young characters, so it's not as like bad as you think. It's just that usually the characters are relatively mature in this show, so them having like a fight in the mud is not quite something you expect. But anyway, you see the dynamic of, you know, Toph is able to just, you know, hang out with the guys and stuff like that. A little bit different. And so Sokka loves a bit of shopping. What about a messenger hawk? So Hawkeye. It could be effective. I like that Toph is wearing the meteorite bracelet, which is pretty cool. It obviously is later revealed to be a thing that can help her to sense when someone is capable of being a metal bender, which is a quite cool thing to add on to it. The idea, of course, being that the meteorite is a very easy sort of metal to bend, so an earthbender who gets quite emotional can have an effect on that band on Toph's arm. So it's a cool explanation. But yeah, here we get into the scams, and this is one of the other things with this episode. It does get very kind of focused on like one thing, that like we don't really have like a side plot in this episode, so it's all focused on one thing, and the one thing here is Toph does scams, we're going to do scams, and we're going to keep doing scams over and over again. And you get it, they need to make money, they're preparing for the invasion here. There is a plot relevance to this. It's just usually a lot of the episodes in this season, when they aren't the most like plot or character heavy, they have the Zuko subplot to the episode to sort of back it up. In that, like, even Nightmares and Daydreams, had that strong Zuko side of things. This one doesn't quite have that. So it's relying on what is the strength of this, plot about scamming. And obviously Toph is in complete control because she's an earthbender who they don't expect to be there in the Fire Nation. And she's blind, so she uses it all to her advantage. It's clever on her part, it's just they're not particularly aware of the attention they're drawing to themselves, or will draw to themselves here. So the cheat, there's nothing in there, but she brings it back in. And they quickly move off. And this is one of those episodes like The Chase where like Katara is meant to be sort of presented a bit like the fun police. She's a bit too serious and focused on, like, we can't be doing this sort of thing. Whereas like you wish there was a little bit more of stealing is wrong, except when it's from pirates. Katara incorporated in here. And like it's one of those dynamics where like it's like, okay, yes, kind of like that's an aspect of Katara's personality, but like emphasizing it to this degree, I'm not quite sure about that. That's why I don't think it's like one of the most like memorable episodes, really. I'll get to the scene that I think from this episode that like is very memorable, and like it's a Combustion Man episode, so of course you always remember that. But I think it is more about the emotional scene when we get to it. That's very, very powerfully done. It's fun completely throughout, definitely, but definitely needed a little bit more. In this episode, they're ultimately going to get to this idea of, it's kind of like Toph acting out a little bit because her parents aren't around, and highlighting once and for all that she does actually care about them. She does miss them. She doesn't hate them completely. She wants to have a relationship with them. But this is the last time within the series it's addressed. Hawkeye is sent out, and as far as I'm aware, he never came back. And I don't believe in the Rift they reference Hawkeye. Lau references Hawkeye receiving a message from Toph, I don't think. So unless Poppy has Hawkeye, like the letter went to Poppy and not Lau, I suppose we're waiting to see when Poppy is reintroduced. Wild child. And I do like that they try to get into the heart of this, of she's acting out because she's not around her parents. Like, it's good because it is kind of real. But I'm kind of like, how do you write this episode and not do anything with it here? And they don't even leave it off like it's a big cliffhanger or anything like that. They don't draw attention to it like they do with Zuko's mom at the end of the series. This one is just like, the letter was sent. Toph celebrates with like the Earth Rumble guys at the end, and the Duke and the Pipsqueak and stuff like that. She's not celebrating with her parents at the end of the war. So it feels like you have an episode about something you don't resolve or get towards. And honestly, it's an episode that, in reflection, feels more like a setup for the rift, and that the rift does a lot of the heavy lifting on this side of the plot, which is credit to the comics that they fit in so nicely. But yeah, there we go. The Runaway. But yeah, some more training here. Nice backgrounds as well. The amount of money they have. Another kind of blind joke, of course. So like Toph and her different nicknames and so on. The Blind Bandit, the Runaway. I was like, it's pretty accurate. Appa just asleep in the background. And she just kind of bribes him here. She just gives him money to like stop talking about this. Don't be concerned. Take this. Appa for armor. He's just like, I could do with that. Could you not have done this before? I wonder, do they still have the armor? Like, I suppose, like, I actually now trying to keep track of it. Of course, they used it for the invasion, and I don't remember them specifically like taking it off. I guess they had to leave it behind one of the times when they just left with Appa. I suppose there's a way to get it back, especially where we are in the comics. But you know, how much of a need is there to armor up Appa that much? Just an interesting thing I completely forgot about until I rewatched it here. Just like, oh yeah, we like Sokka's lost his space sword. What about Appa's armor? Like, no one talks about Appa's armor. Like, let's get that back. Justice for Appa's armor. I love that little just background detail. Katara feeding Appa, just water bending it straight into his mouth. I love the slide across there with Katara. Again, the joke is very good. And obviously, she's written to sound very, very motherly in this scene. She's just straightening up. And I do like that they get to like an interesting point with both characters of challenging Toph with, how do you feel about your parents? You can't be completely okay with this. And Katara having to deal with the fact that, you know, the good aspects of like being that way and being so kind of helpful and protective of everyone, but also the issues that arise from that, her being basically the same age as most of them and her being that way. So I like that. It just, there needs to be just a little bit more on, I think, a lot of these ideas within the episode. to really have it like deliver. In that the being like overly motherly is definitely something they just tend to like emphasize like every once in a while, rather than just she's always like that. And I like this stuff that they sort of emphasize here more towards the end of the series of just Sokka and Aang just talking together and being so much like kind of brothers here, of just like, I love your ideas. And then in the Southern Raiders, like Sokka's like, you're pretty wise. So they're pretty good. And then obviously Sokka completely miscalculating on the whole blindness thing of just like, wait, Toph can't read, so that also means like she couldn't have written the thing either. So either way, we're in a tough situation here. Yeah, we're idiots. I want to see Hawkeye return. And I really do like Sokka's role here of just like, Katara's gone off. Okay, I need to talk to you. Something is up. Like Toph is acting a little overly wild. I'll talk to her. And it's a nice setup of her getting to overhear some real conversation about her. And he's talking about the strength that she showed of like taking on that role after their mother died. But also it created this interesting situation where when he thinks of sort of a motherly figure in his life, it's kind of Katara that comes to mind first. And it's a nice line from Toph here. This feels like the reverse of what Katara said to Toph in The Tale of Toph and Katara, where that was an episode of Katara sort of pointing out what she admires about Toph, and here is sort of the reverse, Toph pointing out what she actually does admire about Katara, that her own parents don't see her in any sort of a way like that. Katara does, and it's almost tough for Toph to have almost like someone in her life that she actually considers to be like a true mother figure almost. It's just a nice little dynamic. And I love this in the background. Sokka and Aang, such a duo in this episode. And here we go, foaming at the mouth. And again, like it's good humor. It's just like I said, it's just one of those episodes where I struggle to place it just anything higher than sort of the middle ground, just because it doesn't do anything, I think, hugely more impactful. But here we go. We catch up to where we started, but now we have full context for this. At this point, Katara and Toph have pretty much made up. And this is just acting here to scam the sort of bounty for her. And here we go. Combustion Man about to be revealed. And I like the attention to detail here. They know to put her in the wooden cell, because they really depended on like we'll put her in a metal cell, so pretty bad stuff. And like he's so huge. Like I wish we got more information on Combustion Man. I also wish we got more information on Palit. they feel about kind of the same level as characters, honestly, in a way. At least we have a tiny bit of extra backstory in the Combustion Man of just like he's won all these Agni Kais, and just the detail of like he blew his own arm and leg off with his abilities. That at least adds something to the character. And I like that, like they've kind of resolved this by not properly talking to each other. And now they're actually going to talk about sort of the issues. And I think it's always good when they're able to do these emotional moments with Toph, because you oftentimes don't associate it with the character, because I think so many times when people talk about the character, it's always the, I'm tough Toph, being cool, wisecracks, just throwing one-liners all over the place. When, from the first episode, The Blind Bandit, the strength of the character was that they could have her be that way, but also highlight the emotions of like within the Blind Bandit, the idea of like she's 12 and she doesn't have any other friends, and how sad she was about apparently not being able to go with Aang, and so on. So having her be able to be really awesome, do all these scams, is super impressive within this episode, but also have that emotional moment of like revealing that her relationship with her parents does impact her. She doesn't like that it's so bad, and that she thinks that there's no hope for them to really see who she actually is, and that's why it delivers so much in the comic when it actually happens. So yeah, here we have sweat bending, of course. Sweaty genius. But yeah, it's such a powerful ability, combustion bending. Again, the most common question I have about the ability and just the two people we know who have it is just, how did they know to get the third eye tattoo? That both characters who have this ability have that tattoo. And obviously it to some degree relates to chi paths, and one of them of course is in the forehead and stuff like that. It's the inside chakra and stuff like that. That's part of it, and they directly address that here with the idea of, what if he gets chi blocked in his forehead? It's very dangerous for him. But for a character like this, who doesn't seem the most intelligent, how do you know to get the tattoo there? Who gave it to him? Why is the tattoo similar across Pali and Combustion Man? A lot of questions of just how. Both combustion benders we know are also incredibly tall and kind of well-built people. So what's up with that? Is it a specific like family lineage? And there we go, it kind of blowing up in his face because he can't control the chi around his forehead temporarily. Combustion Man. Yeah, and then like after all the dialogue back and forth, they do end on this note. I want to write a letter to my parents. But they never come back to it. Because the thing here is that they place the character arc on Toph, when the character arc is ultimately more on her parents. It's the issue is ultimately more with them, that they can't see her for who she actually is, rather than anything with Toph. Because I think most fans and everyone can agree that like Toph ultimately did the right thing for herself, to go with the group who seemingly cared for her kind of more. it's good to address it the other way and just her to send a message back to them, communicate to some degree. But it is very much a dynamic that is on her parents to kind of make that move towards, to being better with her, and changing the way they view her and acknowledging like who she is basically in reality. And so it's a weird one in that, like, in the same way that like we're in 2020 now, we're not in 2008 when all we had was just the episodes of the show. We have answers to some of these questions through the comics, so you have to keep that in mind, of that, like, the show didn't do everything and it set up stuff that it didn't have plans at the time to resolve. So in many ways the idea is like, what was the letter about? Like I said, we haven't come back to it at all. Admittedly, Poppy Beifong hasn't been reintroduced to us, and she might have that letter, but still, it's a decent episode, I think. It's definitely got some fun moments. The Sokka Aang dynamic, of course, they really emphasize the Toph Katara dynamic here, and do some pretty emotional stuff with it. I like the Sokka and Toph conversation as Katara listens underneath. Some pretty emotional kind of big things hit on there, and then I like the little emotional scene that Katara and Toph have towards the end of the episode. Plus, Combustion Man is a decent threat to have in these kind of more scattered episodes before we hit the big plot points. So, like, it hits a lot of ground. Like, for being, I think, one of the maybe slightly weaker episodes of Book 3, which is overall very strong, it still has a lot of great moments to it, for sure. It's just, I think an episode like this could have done with either going more in depth into the character arcs, or maybe this was a chance to also have a subplot with Zuko. But it's pretty solid. So yeah, they're my thoughts on The Runaway. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on the episode. But that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.